So there's this pattern that I've noticed within myself and with so many women in the collective, especially women with a higher spiritual purpose here. And it's that you have a tendency to hide in relationships, specifically romantic relationships. And the reason for this is because stepping into your higher spiritual purpose is fucking scary. It's vulnerable. There's those visibility wounds. There's that unworthiness that comes up. There's that self-doubt. And so it's easier to hide in a relationship and pour into the potential of a relationship, the potential of a man, pouring all that time, that energy, that precious life force energy that you have an abundance of as a highly purposed spiritual woman. And it's so much easier for you to pour that energy into a relationship that you already know is dead, that you already know is done, that you already have learned the lessons from, and it was time to move on a few years ago, a few months ago. And so what we tend to do is we tend to hyper focus on what can I do to change? How can I be better? How can I do the shadow work? How can I do more of the spiritual practices to become a better partner? And then you go into this mothering mode where you then start coaching and trying to teach him how he can be better so that he can step deeper into his purpose and so that the relationship can grow and evolve. And it's the same song and dance. You're pouring energy into a man who doesn't want to change, isn't ready to change, and frankly doesn't need to change. It's that you have outgrown the relationship has served its contract, it's served its purpose, and you're still choosing to linger around, not necessarily because you want to actually save the relationship. Sure, that's a part of it, but it's actually a hiding mechanism. We hide there because it's easier to pour that attention and energy into the relationship instead of ourselves. So many of us highly spiritually gifted and spiritually purposed women grew up in very dysfunctional homes where we learned to overgive, where we learned to be the caretakers, the emotional regulators. We learned that our spiritual gifts need to be poured into everyone else but ourselves. But I'm going to tell you right now, when you start putting that same intention and energy that you're pouring into a dead relationship and a partner who's not meant for you, and you turn that back into yourself, whoo, god damn, things start to change. When we're in these dead situations and these dead relationships that we keep pouring energy into, you'll notice this is where health issues arise. This is where you feel stagnant. Money isn't flowing. For me personally, my psychic gifts get turned way down. And then the second I leave and the second that I start pouring back into myself, the spiritual gifts get cranked back up, money starts to flow, the weight starts to come off, the health issues start to resolve, and everything starts to flow again. You're intentionally putting yourself on pause when you're in these relationships as a way of avoiding stepping deeper into your higher spiritual purpose. Now, none of this makes you bad or wrong or shitty. It's just something to bring attention and awareness to. When something is dead, let it be dead. We as highly spiritually purposed women really need to pour into ourselves. We need to put all of that energy and focus into ourselves until we've reached a point of having a full cup, when we can then begin to start giving more. And here's the thing. I'm never going to be somebody that tells you you need to be perfectly healed before you can be in a relationship. That is not what this is. This is actually about skill development. Because for a lot of women who grew up in dysfunctional relational homes, and we've learned these deep patterns of overgiving, over nurturing, being the emotional regulator, what that does is it actually turns us into the control barometer in our relationship, which turns us into the mother, and we start trying to control and mother everything and manipulate and have everything be a certain way. And that is a protective mechanism. So it's not that you need to be perfectly healed in order to be in a relationship, but you do need to take some time to learn a skill set. And that skill set is actually poureth back into yourself. Learn the habits, learn the routines, learn the ritual, learn how to do that long enough that when you get into a relationship, that you're not going to abandon yourself again, that you're not going to abandon the nudges when it tells you it's done. that you're not going to abandon yourself and pour everything you got into that person. You're going to have a solid rooted sense of self. And that's a really, really important skill to have and to learn. And so however long that's going to take, somebody is going to be dependent on each person. And again, I'm not going to say that that absolutely has to be the case in order for you to be in a happy and fulfilled relationship. But if I look at my own patterns and I look at the patterns of women I've worked with and I look at patterns of women in the collective, there is a period of what people like to call isolation. I don't call it that. I just call it just pouring back into, I call it selfishness, actually, is what I call it. Let's fuck the fluff. I call it selfishness, a period of being selfish. And I think that this is really necessary, especially for women who grew up in enmeshed homes where there was a lack of boundaries, there was a lot of codependency. And so really learning to pour back into yourself is a very valuable skill set to have so that you don't lose yourself in the next relationship. Now, that is a skill set that any woman could benefit from, whether you have a higher spiritual purpose or not. I just find that women with a higher spiritual purpose, at least I know for me, when I'm in those relationships, my whole life goes flat. Like I said, I lose my radiance. I usually get health issues. My hair falls out. I gain weight. I age overnight. I get neurotic. I get anxiety. Money stops flowing. Life doesn't feel as magical. It's really hard to get myself up out of bed. And like, those are all physiological indicators that something's not right and something needs to change. And the truth is at the root of it and in your gut, you already know what that answer is. You already know what the root cause of that is. And then the spiritual gifts get turned way down. I know that I feel way less connected until I'm out of said relationship. And then the dial gets turned up, cranked up. I feel like I go through another revolutionary spiritual awakening where like I'm just being hit with downloads and insights and downloads and insights. My gifts are off the chart and I become a fucking money magnet again. My health starts to get better. And so, yeah, I want to leave this with any woman who is maybe stuck in a situation where you've known that the relationship has been dead for a while and you're putting all this attention and energy and focus into it. Because as we know, where we put our attention, energy flows, and where energy flows, things grow. And if you're constantly putting all this time and energy into a relationship that's already dead and the contract is complete, then you're just wasting precious life force when you could be pouring that energy and intention back into yourself so that you can grow yourself, grow your gifts, grow your business, grow your community, grow your health, whatever it is that you're wanting to grow, that needs to get put back onto yourself. You need to be selfish. And you need to learn how to develop that skill of selfishness. We have been taught that selfish is this like horrible narcissistic thing and that it's the worst thing in the world. But really, it's actually one of the most profoundly healing things a woman can do is learn to be a little bit more selfish. So I'll leave that here with you guys.